Welcome back to Investment Perspectives, everybody. I'm Brad Kimes. You can follow me on Twitter at BackupBradley at the top of the screen, and everything we're talking about here. What you see in front of me is the SEC report for Ripple Labs Incorporated. I've been checking this daily to see if there's any news about a potential IPO announcement. Why would I do that? Or any other news for that matter, because most recently they filed the trademark for Blockstars, the podcast, and then before that, a week or so, they filed the PayID trademark, which tells you that Ripple is absolutely behind that coalition and that company, PayID. So that's pretty remarkable there. We covered that, but there's nothing here that's new yet, no S1 filing as of yet. But I did want to highlight something that I talked about, I believe, yesterday or the day before, and that I've been attending a Link to conference, and it's pretty amazing because there's a lot of information in there. A lot of very special people come through there in the crypto space, and Link 2 is a really cool company selling pre-IPO stocks. They just started selling Uphold. They've been selling Ripple stock. I think they just sold out of one block, but I think they still have some available at another block. However, and Link 2 stocks available as well. But anyway, I wanted to show you this because I covered this, I think it was yesterday. Palantir is also selling pre-IPO stock. Now, what's interesting about this is that Palantir just recently filed for a confidential IPO. Now, I did a video on this, and if you want to learn more about confidential IPOs, you can go to my search box over the playlist of videos, and you can search confidential IPO, and you'll get a lot of information on it. But essentially, any company can choose to do this, and confidential IPO filings allows companies to bypass their traditional IPO filing mechanisms that gives insights into their interworkings, such as financial figures and potential risk. The strategy has been used by companies such as Spotify, Slack, and Uber. However, confidential filing doesn't always translate to an IPO. Okay, so there, it's a disclaimer, right? They may or may not go through the entire process. But usually what they call after the S1 filing, you go into what they call a prospectus period of 5 to 6 months. This is interesting because if, let's say, Ripple were to do a confidential IPO, they really only have to come out 15 days before what would be the roadshow, which, if we all understand the kind of actors and players and big entities that are behind Ripple and intend to absolutely use Ripple software and the asset XRP, this may be a path for them. I mean, some people really believe that won't happen. They'll do a full-on IPO. But again, they may want to minimize how many eyeballs get to look inside the books and for how long. They may not want to have all that information out into the public for 5 to 6 month period of time. They may want to minimize that, have a 15-day window, then announce the roadshow. That'll be about 10 days usually is a roadshow's time period, and then they list. So this is something to definitely keep an eye on. Not saying that would happen. It just, I personally think that may be a good fit for them because they're so back end in the use, and they may want to stay back end in how they actually go public. But we'll see. To be determined, right? But nevertheless, let's go back to Palantir. Palantir, I wanted to remind you, and I did cover this, is that this is their website, and they are a securities company, data collection, and this is amazing because let's just look at some of the customers that Palantir is working with here. As of 2013, Palantir was used by at least 12 groups within the U.S. government, including the CIA, the DHS, the NSA, FBI, the CDC, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, Special Operations Command, West Point, and the Joint IED Defeat Organizations and Allies, and Recovery Accountability Transparency Board. It's unbelievable. The amount you're hearing is, hello. These are such enormous government, let's call branches of the government for great goodness sakes, let alone areas of government, right? You could see easily why they confidential IPO'd here. Now, this is interesting because, some of these entities are very close in similar in characteristics to some of the people that may be working with Ripple even, right? So I find it Interesting that Ripple works with governments, Palantir works with governments. They've chosen to take a confidential IPO path. And maybe, just maybe, we do see Ripple take a confidential IPO. Maybe, just maybe, they're already in that confidential IPO. It's pretty interesting, but nevertheless, I do keep my head on a swivel with that. We will keep you abreast of that. Now, here's the big stuff. So the big stuff is in this conference, we had a surprise guest come in last night, and it was Miguel Vias. That's right. The guy that was in charge of the head of XRP markets, responsible for building over $1 billion worth of liquidity in XRP flows. That is remarkable. And he is such a cool dude. And I'm going to play for you now this interview from Joe Endoso, who got to talk with him and a couple other people. And I'm going to let this play. And it is just very, very cool to see how he responds to these actions and where his thought process is, even now that he's not at Ripple anymore. Let's go ahead and listen to what he says.
So Miguel, while we have you for a couple of minutes, tell us what that job entailed. I mean, it's a formidable title, right? Head of XRP markets, but what exactly did it entail in terms of your responsibilities? What work did you do in that capacity?
Sure. So, I began at the company in November of 16. And if I'm being honest, I think initially it was clear and it was nebulous at the same time. The role, the description of the role was to grow liquidity for XRP as we fine-tune the use case for using it as a bridge asset. But it's not clear exactly how we were going to do that. I think it was coming from, it was at an interesting time in the development of the markets. So, it was whether do we focus on OTC? Do we focus on the exchanges? Do we focus on lending first, or do we just go and get listings? And it was a lot of questions around sort of how we do that. And I wasn't alone. The Jay Chetty was on the team when I first started there. Jay was a huge help. So building liquidity for XRP was the broad mandate. And then that morphed into building liquidity for XRapid and building the partnerships around XRapid, from the market makers to the exchanges, to the users of XRapid. So then that was one piece of it. And then, my team was responsible for managing the sales of XRP. So early markets report, the work that went into putting that together, everything that was highlighted in that in terms of what we were doing in the markets, that was my team as well. So basically those three responsibilities.
Yeah. And what were some of the more formidable challenges that you faced in terms of obtaining institutional adoption for XRP as a bridge asset? Because you could use XRapid, for example, if you're a financial institution, without necessarily using XRP as a value transfer mechanism, right?
Great question.
Sure. I think the theory of XRapid could be asset agnostic. I think with respect to XRP, its attributes in terms of speed and cost really make it perfect for that. In terms of challenges, the biggest hump, I think, for XRapid was getting some of these companies to believe that it was possible to offer a better experience than what they were getting at the time, using this very bleeding edge technology. No one had ever done it before. So it was us promising them that it was possible and that it was something that was going to be better than what they did today, but we didn't have any proof points yet. So it took a long time to get folks bought into the idea that, yeah, it could be better. And I think it's proving out now that, in some aspects, it certainly is better.
Yeah. So
he feels so confident right there. I think it's proven out over time, that it is better. And that is his personal experience as head of the XRP markets. Now listen, we're in the speculator business, right? This isn't a guarantee, but this is the insight of the man who was responsible for building the markets. Now, he's no longer there, but his confidence in what they've achieved and what they continue to do at Ripple and with XRP is very, very high and very strong.
When you left Ripple, were you satisfied at the adoption that you were seeing for both the XRapid product as well as for XRP?
I mean, look, when I left, if I compare where we were when I started to when I left, I could be nothing but satisfied. You know, could you want more? Sure, you can always want more, right? But it's, you know, XRP and XRapid were the first real world institutional uses of digital currencies and distributed ledger technology. I mean, if you're not satisfied by that, I think you're just being ungrateful.
I mean, that's a remarkable statement. And I mean, to remain that confident again, now that you're not even there anymore, and just looking back on where they started to where he was when he left, I mean, he's like, I don't know how you couldn't be satisfied. I mean, that's pretty remarkable. You know, all right, let's let it play.
That's great. Well, in the roughly 2 minutes that we have left, I'm actually going to ask Paul and Brett if they have a quick question for Miguel. Nothing that requires too much explication because we're short on time, but take a shot, guys.
Hey, Miguel, first of all, I'd like to say it's an honor to have you on. I follow your tweets and, you know, I follow Ripple's progress. Yeah, I just wanted to know why you saw a need to move on. Did you complete everything you did at Ripple and felt as though you'd done your job and had to have another crack at something?
Yeah, look, I think I really enjoyed probably those first 18 months, right? The helter-skelter nature of getting something from 0 to 1. And if I'm being honest, the more structured 1 to 100 wasn't quite as enjoyable. So I think that was one factor. It did become a little bit wash, rinse, repeat in terms of, right, we'd set the playbook up and now we kind of execute on that playbook. That was probably one. I think the other thing is, you know, we had staffed when we brought in Brienne. I made myself somewhat redundant with respect to some other markets pieces. That left, again, the XRapid part, which was maturing. So I think that made me think, well, you know, life is short. I have a lot of things going on in my personal life, certainly, and the company may be just fine without me at this point. And I think, you know, we all have big egos and we all think we're completely irreplaceable. But the truth of the matter is, sometimes, you know, you have to let the kids go, right? And not that Ripple was my baby. That's not what I'm saying. But yeah, just the timing was right. And I'm incredibly proud of the work that company has done and does. I think it is some of the best amalgam of talent I have ever seen. I think Brad has built an incredible company. I'm proud to have been a part of it.
This is pretty remarkable. Now, so Brienne Madigan is basically heading up this area of the XRP markets now, the way he pointed that towards her in a great way, that she's doing a fantastic job and he's on to other things. I mean, he had the perspective to step back and go, hey, you know what? I could go on and do something else here. So, I mean, that's a pretty remarkable thing. He speaks highly about the level of talent of people. Now, listen, just our time at Swell, I can attest to this. The quality and level of people that are at Ripple is just astounding. And if you are in their presence, you will feel it immediately. It's very, very real. It's not because you're invested in it. You don't care who you are. You will feel the level of person that you are talking to at that company. There's no question.
Well, just one question I've got for you. Now that you're no longer with Ripple, the $1 million question is, what do you think the upside of XRP is in the short, medium, and long term? And what do you think will what estimate would you have on the price on the IPO of Ripple?
You knew someone was going to have to ask.
Yeah, I mean,
be specific.
Yeah, no. And just because I'm not with Ripple doesn't mean I can say a bunch of stuff. I've signed many documents.
We won't tell anyone what you said.
No, of course not. Get out. Look, what I would say is, I will say this: I am incredibly bullish crypto broadly, and then within crypto, I think you would have to be foolish not to recognize the potential of XRP, especially given all of the progress that Ripple has made. In terms of an IPO, I was not. There's one thing that Brad was always very not transparent about, was any corporate-related things, whether it was mergers, acquisitions, IPOs, raises. That's just something that he was always, and he said this very publicly at many, many meetings, all hands, that it's not something that he would speak to. So I wasn't involved, for instance, with the last raise. I was caught by surprise, I think, just like everybody else in the company. And I'm not a valuations expert, so I don't know where they'll IPO the company. What I would say is I'd be surprised if they did not IPO the company, because I think when Brad says something, and the way he did at Davos, that man is a very, very focused human being. So, if he said that is the plan, I would be surprised if we didn't get there.
Pretty remarkable stuff right there. So, I mean, one, he tells you how focused Brad is. Two, again, he highlights the fact that he wasn't even aware of the last fundraising round that happened until it was announced. Now, again, coming back to the potential possibility of Ripple taking the course and action of a confidential IPO versus a very public IPO with the prospectus period being very wide open. This, I'm speculating, but, this makes me lean into that a little more. When they built things like, government places like the NSA and things like that, they didn't have the same contractor on every part of that building. They would bring in a contractor to do one section of it, the lower part underground. Then they bring a contractor in to do the first 3 to 5 floors, and then another contractor to finish the next set of floors. So there was nobody at any one place that worked on every single thing and knew every single thing about it, because it was a government project. Now, I know that Ripple's not exactly a government project, but I think it's for governments. I think it's for banks. I think it's for back end of the entire financial system, from the internet to the private systems that will be developed for CBDCs for the ledger, because this is about the XRP ledger. The token is going to be a representation of the value that sits and moves across the ledger. As the value of the token comes up, it helps move things of value around easier, and it will take less of the tokens to move them around. Utility plus liquidity over time equals price. That's Miguel Vias. All right, so only a couple more seconds here. Let's just listen to the final few things here, and we'll let it go.
Great. Thank you, Miguel.
Pleasure.
We're putting this before the bedtime stories of your kids, but now you can go and do that. And I'm sure we're going to have you back, so for a much more extensive discussion. But thank you very much for coming in at the 11th hour. And Paul and Brent, thank you very much as well for coming and joining.
Okay, so that's the rest of that. So, all right, so look, it is enormous to hear how bullish he is on crypto broadly. And I mean, look, let's face it. I mean, we're in an investors conference, and there are ethics rules and things of that nature. You cannot speak directly to price. I mean, there's no way in the world that he could do that, and he's obviously still under NDAs and things of that nature, even after leaving the company, because he was in such a special position. So it's still hugely exciting and positive for me to hear him not be at Ripple, not be in this space at the moment that we know of, and to still be broadly very, very bullish on crypto in general. And I think that's exciting. And I think that's exciting because we know even at his time at Ripple, he was absolutely very confident about what XRP could do and the solution it could provide for so many businesses and banks and people around the world. So, all right, guys, that's going to do it for me. I just wanted to share that and keep the conversation about a confidential IPO up in the air. because of the kind of government. Look, I think of Michelle Bond. We've worked with over 50 governments. You know, it's like, well, Palantir's working for government agencies and branches of government, and they confidential IPO'd. So I wouldn't take it off the table. We're not saying it's absolutely going to happen, but the other thing I wouldn't take off the table is that we don't find something out before the summer's over. That may happen too. So, all right, guys, that's going to do it for me. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe. Share it with somebody you know. We'll catch you on the next one.